The road narrowed as if the forest had decided we were far enough. The green on both sides went from postcard Pennsylvania to something older and more deliberate. Pines straight as pillars, bark the color of burnt sugar. The last bars on my phone clung on like a stubborn fly, then slipped away when we took the bend after the fire tower sign. The dash GPS rerouted, failed, tried again, and gave up with a polite beep. Left, Cassie said, not looking at any screen. Her finger traced air above the windshield. That little cut by the marker, it's the spur the forum thread mentioned. I didn't see a marker, just a sliver of dirt barely wider than our Subaru's tires. The main forest road had been gravel so uniform it felt curated. This spur looked like it hadn't been driven since last fall. I lifted off the gas. Branches leaned in to whisper their opinions along our paint. "You sure?" I said, already turning the wheel because I am, historically, a coward around Cassie's color-coded confidence. She didn't answer right away. She was riffling the yellow folder navigation and permits from a stack of 5 in her lap. Blue was meals, green was first aid, red was contingencies, white was misc/ just in case, which meant it contained everything terrifying: copied driver's licenses, medical cards, a notarized something I never agreed to sign. She tapped the map she'd printed at 200%. Site 17's down a half mile. Not far. People said it's flat with a good table. The ranger wreck I called said it's quiet. Quiet, I repeated before I could stop myself. Quiet, she said again, but with the smile that says you're teasing me. We're having fun. The tires slid into the rut and found a logic to follow. Branches combed the roof. Light filtered down in dappled coins that clinked on the hood and dissolved. Colder than sunlight should be at 4 in the afternoon in late September. I felt my shoulders climb toward my ears and made them go back where they belonged. 4 hours from Pittsburgh. Coffee had gone warm, lower back made of chalk. A headache blooming behind my right eye the way it does when I've looked at a spreadsheet too long. It would pass. Cassie hummed under her breath like she did when things were lining up the way she'd planned. The spur opened without ceremony into a clearing carved just big enough for a table. A ring of stones, and one blue tent in the exact dimensions of the eerie catalog we'd sat with on our couch. Except our tent was still rolled, and the blue I was looking at was an old tarp someone had slung over a woodpile last season. "It's perfect," she said, already unbuckled, door open, both boots on the forest floor before the engine stopped tick-ticking. Her hair, the color of penny copper under this weird light, was tied in a no-nonsense ponytail that could command a small army. Flat, tucked, and away from the traffic. I nailed it. "You did," I said, because she had. It did look like a magazine photo. The table had initials carved in it deep enough to have survived 3 winters. The fire ring held an honest circle. The ground where a tent should go had the forgiving give of old pine needles. I got out and tried the stretch that's supposed to put your spine back where God meant it to be. Something popped. Cassie had the trunk open and was doing that thing she does where a lot becomes less by becoming labeled. Bins went left or right. Wasp spray on the table, knives wrapped in cloth, a spice kit like we were auditioning for a cooking show that films in national forests. I lifted the tent bag because that's the one job that looks masculine enough you can't screw it up. That's when I noticed the first wrong thing. Silence. Not the city kind that's a layer you peel back and find more layers, sirens at a distance, the whoosh of your own HVAC. It was a silence that had weight, I stood there with a bag of tent over my shoulder and felt the air turn solid in my ears like I'd ducked underwater. "Do you?" I said, then stopped, because pointing out vibes is a coward's hobby. "Do you want the footprint oriented east or south, sunrise or shade?" She looked up, saw my face, and misread the expression in the way that makes me love and hate her at the same time. "We'll do east. You like waking up with sun. Help me with the footprint, then I'll stake while you run guy lines. If we're fast, we'll make the stars before full dark." I nodded. We moved like a small team that has done kitchens together and road trips and in-law Thanksgivings, and those nights when grief arrives in sweatpants and you both have to make the couch into a ship. We unfolded and threaded and staked. She corrected my corner twice without a sigh, which is love language in a long marriage. The silence pressed. Twice I paused with a stake half-hammered to listen for one single bird. And twice I got the quiet you only get in those sensory deprivation tanks rich people pretend are self-care. I told myself we had scared the life out of the ridge on arrival, that everything would come back once the forest forgave the Subaru. We did the little tour of competence. Check rainfly tautness, vestibule zip, pad inflations, sleeping bag loft. She started arranging the cook surface like Messi in place on a Food Network set. Peppers and onions, bags labeled with painter's tape, Italian sausages marinated in something that had an herb I could never pronounce. She was vibrant, the way she gets when a plan sits down obediently on the lap of a Saturday. I brought the little stove over and set it where she pointed, and when I inhaled, because it all smelled like cumin and vinegar and this dumb long life we were building, I tasted a penny in the back of my throat. It was tiny. Maybe it was the water bottle. Maybe it was adrenaline. I didn't say anything. "Fire first," she said. "Stars need us fed." She built the teepee like she'd practiced on YouTube. The match flared and made a firm decision. I watched flame behave like someone who's read the manual. We worked in that contented, quiet couples get that looks like silence but is really shared memory doing its job. Except this wasn't that. When the meal went on, a sizzle too loud in the dead hush, I realized my jaw was clenched enough to hurt. Cassie plated like a restaurant because Cassie needs at least one thing every day that looks like she imagined it. I took a bite and got the coin again. Not overpowering, just there. Tinny. Her eyes flicked up to mine and I tried to be an actor. "Good," I said. "You were right about the marinade." "It's not about being right," she said, which is what someone says just before it is. "Do you want more mustard?" I took a second bite because that's marriage, and I chewed, and it wasn't the sausage. It was the air or the fork or my own tongue, and then I heard myself say, "Do you hear how quiet it is?" She set her fork down, not hard, just precise. "We're a mile off the road. It's Allegheny. This is the point." "I know," I said. "I just—" She reached across and put two fingers on my wrist the way you would on a pulse. "We're going to eat. We're going to catch Milky Way. We are going to sleep." I nodded, because she was right about the plan, because the plan was the raft. When dusk came, it didn't amber into blue like in the city. It stepped down like a light on a dimmer, too smooth, no texture. Our lantern flicked on. Its battery light was a white so clean it felt like a mistake against the pine. When she said ready, the words sounded like we were in a room with carpet and walls. No leaf shiver. No bird saying last prayers. Nothing. "Headlamps," I said, like a man who has ever wanted to turn his own brain into an enemy. We took the footpath you could only see because someone else had believed in the same meadow. The beam of my light fell apart at 12 feet. I kept the cone of vision on Cassie's boots because the thought of lifting it to the black between trees felt like the wrong way to live. The trail stepped us out onto a dark dish about 30 yards across. Above it, the sky turned itself up like a show. The Milky Way wasn't the smeary rumor I remembered from Scouts. It was a wound of stars so dense you could believe in old stories again. Cassie made a sound I'd heard at weddings and once when she got a promotion that mattered. She turned her lamp off. "Give your eyes a minute," she said, "and then, because she loves me, we can keep your light if you want." I turned mine off too because I am proud and stupid. The dark held. Then our pupils did whatever heroics pupils do, and the dish filled in at the edges, and the trees were no longer a wall but an army of the faithful. The sky got brighter entirely by refusing to be measured. Cassie lifted the camera, checked her shutter, breathed. When the exposure ticked, the little LCD printed ghosts of colors we weren't good enough to see in real time. Pink threads, a bruised blue. She grinned sideways at me and looked 16 in a way that made something old and good wake up in my chest. I almost forgot to keep my eyes where I'd promised to keep them. At the edge of the dish, between two pines that had decided to be closer than their neighbors, the dark had the wrong shape. I didn't think person. I thought absence, and then my brain tried to be helpful and assigned a height to it, then shoulders, then the tall narrow of someone stretched by a carnival mirror. I didn't say anything. It is important that you understand that. I have been told I feed my own fear, that I invent edges where there are curtains. I counted silently to 10 and looked again. The wrong shape didn't move. Its neighbor wrong shape did, but in a way wind would move if wind had choreography. I said Cassie's name and it came out like a second breath. "What?" she said, not looking up. "There are," I swallowed, tried to start somewhere rational. "Between those two pines," I said and pointed, which is both useless and mandatory. She glanced exactly as a favor and then back to her focus ring. "Trees," she said, and then, because she hates being dismissive when I'm trying, "You want me to shoot that way?" "Yes," I said, and then, because I love being right in ways that make me hate myself, "Please." She panned the lens feather-light. The shutter did its 2-second thing. The screen popped to life with a frame that, the longer you stared, the more it wanted to tell you something. She didn't say anything at first. I watched her face, not the screen. That is how I know the moment she saw them. Her jaw loosened in a way that isn't fear yet. Then her eyebrows twitched like they'd been asked a question. Then she forgot her body and only her eyes existed. "How many?" I asked, and I sounded very, very calm. "3, she said. Then, like she was changing a number in a spreadsheet with a formula she had finally located, 4. We both lifted our heads at the same time. We both looked at the same edge. We both fixed on the coordinates couples develop the way you develop taste. They did not move like people deciding to go somewhere. They moved like a thing that had been a still image and then became the next still image in a flipbook. A single unhurried step forward, done together without the micro wobbles of life. "Okay," I said, and the word broke in the middle. "We're going." No argument from Cassie. The camera strap came up around her neck with a motion that had probably saved its life 36 times. She grabbed my sleeve and we were running, and if you have ever run in the woods at night, you know it is not about speed, it is about bargaining. Don't turn your ankle. Don't lose the thread of trail smell. Don't lift your light into the space where your terror lives. Branches took their tacks. I caught a root, recovered, heard her do the same a heartbeat later. The hurt I expected, the crash of pursuit, the snap of a twig not under my foot, didn't arrive. The only sound was our lungs bargaining with our legs. The clearing opened like an apology, and the dead coals of our ring were the kindest thing I'd ever seen. We went into the tent like a ritual, her left then me. The zip up like we were sealing something in which I understood immediately was a joke. We lay on the bags, not under them, boots still on, headlamps off, because if you can see the fabric glow, something else can see it glow. I told myself to count my breaths. I got to 12. The forest did not rush in with its normalcy. It held the silence with both hands. The zipper noise started far away. It took me a second to know that's what it was, because who hears a zipper with no teeth in it? Then it was close, and it was a zipper, and you could hear each individual tooth separate, like the clicks on a bike wheel going the wrong way. It stopped at 6 inches. That's a measurement I know, because I measured it in my head with the specificity of a man who wants rules. It did not immediately widen. It did what you do when you come to a threshold and decide not to cross it yet because you want the people inside to understand you could. I don't know how long it took to go from 6 inches to 12. I know that when the gap was large enough to show the shape of the world beyond our tent, the world arranged itself into a silhouette that had the wrong math for a person. Too tall without weight, too narrow without frailty. It did not speak. It did not breathe in a way I could hear. It did not stick anything inside. It stood in its own absence and pressed its attention on us until my heartbeat was a noise I wanted to apologize for. It left the way a light does when someone unscrews the bulb slowly. The zipper climbed back up in exact reverse. The forest did not resume. It held its breath like we were holding ours. When I opened my eyes again, the navy of the tent was a paler blue that said morning had found us despite our best attempt to freeze it out. Cassie spoke first, voice like a wire pulled tight. "We're checking the camera," she said. "Coffee," I said, because the older part of me needed to say a word that belongs in kitchens. "Camera," she repeated, and we both let that be the plan we would betray or obey together. The photos came up one after the other, the way the end of a vacation does. A thing you hoarded and now it's going too fast. Stars, a softness of color like we'd earned some truth. The edge of a tree line that meant nothing until you let your eyes go soft and it meant a very specific thing. "Zoom," I said, and she did, and the pixels did what they do, and the shape stayed wrong inside the noise. She flicked. The frame changed. The tent from outside, composed like someone who has done editorial features about how to camp right. The timestamp had the audacity to put numbers on a night I had decided was not made of minutes. She flicked. The zipper, open an inch. The kind of inch that has more story than 12 inches of anything else. She flicked. The inside of our tent from the door. She flicked. The inside of our tent from the corner. She flicked. The inside of our tent from above, like someone had mounted the camera on the ceiling we did not have. My face was in that one very clearly. It looked like a man watching his own ending arrive. She didn't cry. She put the camera down and folded both hands in her lap the way she had when a doctor once told us something we couldn't fix with lists. "We're leaving," she said. "Yes," I said. "We packed wrong. We packed like people who were evacuating a flood. A fork went in with socks. The rainfly got sat on. The blue bin lids didn't snap because lids were for people living on a different calendar. When a bin fell open and the spice kit slid into the dirt, I almost said, I can repack, but I didn't, because there isn't a version of me worth keeping if I become the kind of man who argues with a woman who just found a picture of him taken from above his bed. The drive out found ruts I didn't remember. Branches put their hands on the car and left light fingerprints we wouldn't see until we washed with dish soap 2 weeks later. When the forest road widened and my phone found a bar that grew a second, Cassie reached for it and then didn't. We hit a straightaway with a line of sun like a blessing, and she said, "You were tasting it too, weren't you?" "The metal," I said. "Yeah." She nodded once. We did not say the words we were both thinking because some words call things closer. We did not look in the rearview mirror. Not for the next 2 miles. Not for the next 2 weeks. Not in any way that mattered. The Subaru felt smaller once the trees thinned, like we'd taken the tent down and put the night inside the car with us. Cassie drove because she always does when the mission is leave. Her hands were steady at 10 and 2, the way she learned in a class with orange cones on a school lot. The road widened from rutted brown to disciplined gray, centerline clean enough to trust. A billboard for a roofing company leaned over the shoulder as if eavesdropping. My phone found a single bar and then another, and then remembered it had better places to be and dropped them both. "Gas in Warren," she said, eyes forward. "We'll make it." "Quarter tank," I answered as if the gauge wasn't inches from her face. I tried a smile that I hoped would look like I remembered how. "We should make a rule about eating the good snacks first so we don't save them for an apocalypse that's already happening." She didn't look over. "We ate dinner." "Right." I worked my jaw like there was gum there. The taste of metal had ridden out of the forest with us. I could pretend it was the old travel mug or blood from a cut I didn't have. It sat under my tongue like a coin I was too polite to spit out. A black pickup tucked in behind us, the kind with a grill like a clenched jaw. Every few moments the driver inched closer, then fell back, like he was testing how much our little bubble could hold. Cassie nudged the cruise 2 miles over the limit. The truck matched without effort. "People tailgate because they are late to nothing," I said, not at her. "Like running toward a line at the DMV that isn't going anywhere." "James," she said, a warning and a prayer. "I'm fine." It sounded like the way people on TV say it while a paramedic straps them to a gurney. The highway cut through low hills stitched with scrub. Barns tilted away from themselves in yards full of tractors that hadn't moved in months. The sky was the color of dishwater. I kept a steady eye on the rear view, which is to say I kept checking to make sure things were still behind us and not inside with us. The truck eased closer again. The horn fired one sustained blast, deep enough to feel in my spine. It cut off mid-sound. No fade, no lurch back to quiet. Just a hard slice of silence where noise had been a half-second before. The hair at my nape caught a draft that didn't exist. The Subaru's engine seemed to hesitate, but the tack didn't. Cassie's knuckles went white on the wheel and then pink again. The truck dropped back as if none of us had done anything at all. "He let off," she said. "That's not how letting off sounds. Semis do that sometimes. Air brakes, pressure." She groped around for systems, for words that explain. "It's physics." "Okay." I made physics into 2 syllables and let them roll around my mouth until they tasted like the coin again. She fiddled with the radio, landed on a station with 2 hosts who sounded like everyone's uncles arguing about high school football. One of them said "buddy" and "pancakes" in the same sentence, and it was almost funny. The noise helped in the way that water helps a drowning person if you pour it on them from a glass. "We spooked ourselves," she said, softer. "We were tired and we wanted to be scared, I think. You bring that forum stuff into your head like luggage and it doesn't fit anywhere else, so it ends up on the furniture. The forum stuff, the threads, The late-night stories where someone drives past the same mile marker over and over and doesn't tell the truth to their passenger because telling the truth makes the loop real. I watched the mile markers sneak past like they were embarrassed to be working today. "You saw the pictures," I said. "We'll delete them." She said it like cleaning the kitchen after guests leave. "We don't have to keep everything." The sheets pulled at the horizon with its red canopy like a carnival that sold only things with calories. Cassie signaled early and dignified. We took a pump near the edge, away from a cluster of teenagers in hoodies on skateboards and a man with diesel who had the look of someone who had slept in his truck more than once. "I'm pumping," I said. "You want?" "Coffee," she said, already opening her door. "Hot, doesn't matter what." The smell of gasoline has always meant Sunday chores to me, and right then it smelled like doctrine. I set the nozzle and locked it. The numbers ticked up with the calm of a metronome. A woman in scrubs came out of the store and paused to stare at the sky like it owed her an apology. A child pointed at a machine full of gumballs and turned his body into want. Inside, the fluorescent lit everything 1 degree too honestly. The coffee island offered 7 flavors of optimism. I filled 2 cups, added cream to hers the way she likes it on road days, swirled mine black to punish myself for something I couldn't name. In the freezer door, a reflection glanced back at me. At first it was me, slightly taller because glass does that, slightly pale because fatigue does that. I adjusted my stance and the me in the glass forgot to move. I crouched to pretend I'd dropped something. When I stood, the angle changed and the reflection remembered to behave. I left the jerky on the floor without meaning to. At the counter, the clerk asked if I wanted a receipt, and I wanted to ask if he could hear the tone that had replaced part of my morning, if noise could have a missing tooth, if he'd ever stood 6 inches to the left of himself in glass. Back at the car, the pump had clicked done and Cassie was in the driver's seat with the radio at a sensible volume. I passed her the coffee and she closed both hands around it like it would get away. "We're fine," she said. "It was dark and our brains wanted edges, that's all." The pickup rolled past on our left, driver looking straight ahead like there was no such thing as us. The horn did not sound. The world contained everything it was supposed to contain, plus this, a seam running through the day that you could fall into if you looked too closely. We pulled out and headed for the on-ramp. Cassie merged like a person you'd trust with your life, which I do. The radio hosts pivoted to weather, and then to an ad about mortgage rates. When the toll plaza came into view, a tidy row of booths with arms standing at attention and little green arrows commanding yes, the station bled into a carrier tone. No voice, no static, no ad. Just a flat, perfect line of sound, the kind engineers use to find out whether a thing is working. It filled the car and made space behind my eyes. Cassie reached for the volume and didn't touch it. I could feel her counting in her head because I was counting in mine. 5 seconds is long enough to realize you're counting. 11 seconds is long enough to decide something can't be a coincidence. At 11, the hosts returned mid-laugh as if we had stepped out of time to look at it from the side and then stepped back in when it was finished with its thought. "Signal glitch," she said. "Towers, interference, a weather thing, something." "Something," I said. The arm lifted for us. The booth window was empty. Maybe it had always been empty. Maybe people worked in there once, and then the job went to a camera and a database, and a way of knowing you passed a place without having to look you in the face. We rolled through the gate and back onto a strip of road that didn't care if we were 2 inches to the left of where we thought we were. We didn't talk for a while. Traffic thickened by degrees. A red sedan sat in our blind spot for 5 full minutes, and it felt like a dare. A billboard promised a haunted hayride starting next weekend, and I promised myself I would never laugh at irony again. By clarion, the gray had softened to a lighter gray that people are generous enough to call afternoon. Cassie rested her wrist on the wheel and rolled her shoulders, and I could hear her doing the math of how far to home and how far to being someone who never went to the woods. "We should stop for lunch," I said, because that's the sort of sentence that can carry a day on its back if you let it. "I'm not hungry. We could grab a—" "Not hungry," she said, and it wasn't just about food. The pickup reappeared 2 cars behind us. Or maybe it was another one exactly like it, because trucks are uniforms you can buy. The thought of all that weight arranged in a rectangle and aimed at us made something in me want to pull over and walk the rest of the way along the shoulder, counting guardrail bolts like rosary beads. I told myself to think about the Steelers. I told myself to think about which exit has the nicer bathrooms. I told myself I would start doing breath work if breath work would consider doing me. "Why that site?" I said, not because it mattered anymore and precisely because it didn't. 17, you were so sure. "It was on the forum list," she said. "Flat, private, away from it all, remember. You said you wanted quiet. Not that kind." She set her mouth and breathed the way you do when you want the next 10 miles to be a meditation instead of a fight. "We're going to get home," she said. "We're going to shower. We're going to put everything away. We're going to have something with carbs. We're going to sleep. Tomorrow we're going to be normal, and this will be a story we tell about the time we scared ourselves like idiots." Okay. I tried the word on. It didn't fit. Pittsburgh rose up out of the river like it always does, cranes and glass and bridges the color of school buses. The hills shouldered the neighborhoods around in that way that makes you feel like a smaller animal, darting from one patch of cover to the next. Cassie took the exit we always take because there are habits you keep even when the rest of your life is being repainted by strangers while you're at the grocery store. Our street looked like a magazine accidentally left open. Porches with mums. A black cat on a railing doing its best impression of folklore. A boy practicing layups on a driveway hoop, with the net tangling the ball like it was in love. The house had the look of a place that had been waiting for you in a good way. We parked, and the garage door laughed a little as it climbed because the spring needs tightening, something I keep meaning to remember. Inside, the air held the polite smell of a place that has been empty for 2 days and would like to be forgiven. The gear we dumped into the garage stayed in a single humiliated heap. Cassie set the white folder on the counter and stacked her keys in the bowl like the bowl had a heart and needed a little weight to keep beating. She put both hands on the edge of the sink and closed her eyes, then opened them and looked like a person with a job to do. "Shower," she said. "You should take one too. Then food, then bed." "You first," I said. I'll start the upload. Don't keep anything from last night." She tapped the counter with 2 fingers as if that could nail the instruction to the wood. "Delete them if they show up. We don't need that in our heads." She left the kitchen, the bathroom fan clicking on like a small plane. The pipes under the floor did their winter soldier routine. I opened the laptop because that's what you do when everything else is made of weather. The screen came up to the cloud service we dump our lives into because we're convinced memory is better when it has a timestamp. The little pinwheel did its spinning, polite as a waiter. The weekend folder was there, already half filled with stars and trees and a picnic table before it became metaphor. I selected the whole block of last night's shots with a sweep and sent them to the trash, and then clicked the trash and emptied it, and then emptied the emptied trash, because sometimes what you need is the illusion of control. A new album blinked into being. Maybe it had been there and the refresh made it remember to show itself. It had a title I hadn't written. Home 2023. The air went thinner around my head. My first thought was that Cassie had finally sorted the mess of summer photos she'd been talking about organizing. That thought lasted exactly as long as it took me to click. Our kitchen table. Our kitchen table with 2 plates and my hand mid-gesture. Motion caught in the still, like it always looks more dramatic when you can't hear it. The angle was from the corner by the back door, the one with the little shelf where we keep mail, except there's nowhere to put a camera there unless you screwed it into the plaster. The timestamp was mid-July, a Tuesday. We had eaten leftover pesto pasta and laughed about the way my boss says, reach out like it's a religion. Next photo, the couch. Cassie in her reading glasses, legs tucked, blanket up to her shins, laughing at something I had said off frame. The angle from above the bookshelf, as if a bird had perched there and learned to hold a camera in its claws. You could see the lamp cord making the loop we always say we'll tape down. The bathroom mirror. Me shaving, head tipped. The glass blurred in a way that tells you the person holding the camera wanted the shot to have romance. The timestamp was a Thursday in May at 6:41 a.m. If you had asked me what I was doing that morning, I would have said shaving, and we could have laughed about how funny that is until I realized I was right for the wrong reason. A run of bedroom photos, us asleep. Sometimes the angle from the closet door, like the space inside the suits, was an aisle in a theater. Sometimes from the foot of the bed, as if the camera had been set right on the trunk where we keep quilts. In one I'm on my stomach, in another my mouth is open, in the last my hand is thrown over my head like I'm surrendering to something indecent. The timestamp stepped through weeks with the gentle patience of a stalker who isn't in a hurry. The most recent image wore the wet on it like it had just been taken out of a river. Steam blurred the frame. Behind it, the suggestion of skin and hair and the frosted pattern on the shower glass. It had been taken 23 minutes ago. I closed the laptop without remembering that my hands had to do the closing. The bathroom fan cut off. The pipes changed their mind about who they were. Footsteps crossed the hall, the rhythm familiar enough to keep me from fainting and unfamiliar enough to make my jaw lock. Cassie came into the kitchen with a towel turban and a robe the color of an apology. She was pink at the cheekbones and soft around the eyes in a way that usually makes me remember our wedding cake. "Your turn," she said. "There's still hot left." I tried to say her name and it came out as air. She frowned, the concerned version, not the annoyed one. "James. There's a new album," I said, because nouns and verbs are all that's left when you don't have magic. "What?" "On the cloud." My voice had the texture of paper. "It's called Home 2023. I didn't make it. It's—" The word wrong snapped shut in my teeth. She picked up the laptop like it had wronged her personally. I opened it for her because my fingers wanted a job. The service page lay there as if it had been waiting, thumbnails lined in a grid like an instruction manual. She clicked the first picture. Her face tightened around the mouth the way it does when a soufflé falls in a video and the chef pretends that's how it's supposed to look. "How far back?" she said, almost idly. "June." I swallowed. May, April. She scrolled. The sound of the trackpad was a tiny crisp that made the room feel full of broken glass. She clicked a bedroom shot, and then the next, and then one with us on the couch, where you can see the reflection of the TV in the window, and the reflection isn't what's on the TV. She clicked the bathroom mirror where I'm shaving, and then one where she's pinning her hair, and then the shower. The frame fogged and unambiguous about what the shape behind the glass was. The timestamp stamped across the corner like a notary who couldn't believe his luck. She put the laptop down on the table like it might bite. For a second, she stood with both palms on the wood as if she could press her way back through it and into the tree that used to be. Then she pulled out a chair and sat, and her knees touched the underside of the table with a little sigh like I always tell myself to fix that. I deleted the other ones, I said, which is the kind of sentence that thinks it is help and is only a mouth practicing motion. She nodded once and then again, and her eyes went somewhere I couldn't follow because I don't have that map. When she looked up at me, she had none of the neat lines she likes to draw around the word explain. They weren't in that forest, she said. They were in here. They've been in here the whole time. The sound the refrigerator makes when it cycles off didn't come. The kitchen didn't do its usual click as the AC calmed. The house took a breath and held it. I reached for her hand because that is one of the very few things I know how to do. Her fingers were damp and cold. We sat like that, hands making a shape we've made 1,000 times. The laptop opened to a gallery of our lives as seen by something that did not ask permission. The window over the sink showed the neighbor's maple nodding, and behind it, a thin slice of a sky that hadn't committed to being evening yet. I realized I was holding very still, like a man trying not to startle a deer, or like a man who knows the thing outside the glass is waiting for him to make a sound so it can measure him correctly. Okay, she said finally, and I don't know which version of okay she meant, the one where you put on shoes and go, or the one where you set fire to your life because a house is only a box people agree to be safe inside. Okay, somewhere down the block, a car door shut, and two people who had never heard of us laughed at something that happened at work. The laugh reached our porch and threw itself down like a rug. It didn't cross the threshold. We both looked, not at the door, but at the strip of space under it where shadows always collect first. The kitchen table turned into a crime lab without anyone saying so. Cassie pulled the laptop closer, shoulders hunched, hair still damp from the shower. I fetched a legal pad from the drawer we use for coupons and junk mail. We didn't decide to make an inventory. We just started counting because counting is a rope you can hold onto when the floor disappears. 57 photos in home 2023. The earliest timestamp, April 2, 11:13 p.m., both of us asleep, angle from the closet door. The latest timestamp, less than an hour ago, Cassie at the stove pouring water into the kettle, me leaning on the counter with my arms folded. I wrote each date and time in neat rows. Beside them, notes: bedroom, dinner, shaving, reading. Every ordinary thing we had done in our own house turned into evidence of trespass. My pen cut grooves into the paper. It's all our routines, Cassie whispered, scrolling slower now as if each image deserved cross-examination. Morning coffee, evening TV, showers, even the pasta from our anniversary. They've been here every time we weren't looking. The words felt heavier than any ghost story. Not they came once, not they broke in to steal, but they've been inside the whole time, building an archive of us. I checked the Ring app on my phone, desperate for rational proof. No alerts, no motion detected. No strangers at our door. The camera had been as vigilant as a scarecrow. Nothing, I said. No one entered. The windows, Cassie asked. We did a circuit of the house, touching each lock like worshippers at a shrine, all latched, screens in place. No scratches, no tool marks, back door bolted, basement hatch shut tight. Nothing stolen, Cassie said when we regrouped in the kitchen. Her voice was brittle. My jewelry, your laptop, the TV, everything's still here. They didn't want stuff. My throat closed on the word. They wanted us. For a moment the fridge motor filled the silence, that low animal hum you forget is always there. Cassie leaned against the counter, knuckles white on the laminate. I thought of the forest, of listening for birdsong and hearing nothing, the silence pressing in like insulation. Then it happened again. The hum stopped, not cycled off, not faded, just gone. The air conditioner followed, its soft push replaced by absence. Even the tick of the kitchen clock faltered and failed. The whole house went into a terrible mute. Cassie clamped her hands over her ears instinctively, but there was nothing to block. The absence made its own sound, a vacuum that tightened in the skull. James. Her voice was too loud. It's the same silence. I nodded, my tongue tasted of coins again. We edged back to the table, to the laptop screen glowing in the hush. The cursor blinked in the corner of the photo album. 57 images, then 58. A new thumbnail slid into place as we watched. I clicked it with shaking fingers. The picture filled the screen. It showed our kitchen table, laptop open, timestamp stamped now. Two figures hunched over the glow, their backs to the lens, us, and the angle it was from behind. From inside the kitchen, no more than 3 feet away. Cassie slammed the laptop shut like it was a snake. The silence swelled to fill the room. Neither of us turned around. Cassie was the one who dialed. She did it with the laptop closed, as if the very sight of the screen could change what she would tell them. I sat on the couch with my hands clasped between my knees, waiting for the sound of sirens, for the theater of authority to arrive and put the world back into its old shape. The knock at the door was ordinary. 3 even raps, not a rush, not urgent. The officer on the porch was mid-30s, clean uniform, kind eyes. He introduced himself as Officer Harper, asked if everything was all right. "We think someone's been in our house," Cassie said, her voice carefully steady, "taking pictures of us." His brows lifted, the way people react to something they want to file under, odd but harmless. He stepped inside, flashlight in one hand though it was broad daylight. He asked about signs of forced entry. We showed him the locks. He asked about stolen property. We showed him that everything remained in place. "So what makes you think someone's been here?" he asked. Cassie opened the laptop. I wanted to stop her to keep the proof to ourselves, but she clicked anyway. The album loaded, home 2023. He leaned over, squinted at the screen, clicked through a few frames. His expression barely changed. "These look blurry," he said after a moment. "Could be camera glitches. Phones sometimes trigger cloud uploads you don't remember making." "I didn't take these," Cassie said. Her voice cracked on the "didn't." "I understand." His tone was sympathetic but rooted in the soil of disbelief. "Without evidence of entry or theft, it's hard for us to pursue. If you notice anyone around the house, get a plate number, call us right away." He left us with a card and a smile designed to close the matter. The cruiser's engine faded into the distance, leaving our block ordinary again except for the weight pressing between our ribs. Cassie sat at the table, jaw set. She opened the album, selected the entire folder, and deleted it. She clicked the trash, emptied that too, then leaned back as if she had slain something with her own hands. I refreshed the page. Home 2023 blinked back into existence, unbothered, every photo still in place. Cassie shoved away from the table, chair scraping the tile. It won't go. That night, after too much silence, I texted Evan, our friend from college who worked in IT security. He came by with a backpack full of drives and a smirk he usually wore when someone forgot their Wi-Fi password. "Let's scan your network," he said. He plugged into our router, fingers quick over his keyboard. For 15 minutes he was all mutters and scrolling lines of code. Then he went still. "What is it?" I asked. He rotated the screen so we could see. "Something pinged your Nest Cam yesterday at 3 a.m., not as a device, as a user, like it logged in. But we didn't." His eyes narrowed. "No, you didn't, but something else did. From inside your own network." We all turned our heads at once when the printer in the corner whirred awake. No one had touched it. The rollers pulled a sheet through with mechanical patience. The page dropped onto the tray face up. A photograph, black and white, slightly grainy, us, in bed last night. My hand shook when I picked it up. We were lying exactly as we had, Cassie curled against me, both our mouths slack with exhausted sleep. The timestamp in the corner read 2:47 a.m. The printer fan wound down into silence. By morning we had given up pretending this was still life as usual. The coffee tasted like chalk. The kitchen clock ticked 3 minutes slow. Every object in the house felt like a suspect. Cassie dragged a legal pad across the table, ripped out last night's inventory sheet, and wrote a new title in block letters: House Rules. "Every horror story has them," she said flatly. "Cabins, motels, basements. If we can write ours down, maybe we can stay ahead of this." I wanted to tell her it was childish. Instead, I found myself dictating. Rule 1, never trust silence. If the fridge hum cuts, if the house goes still, we move. We stay awake. We acknowledge it. Rule 2, mirrors our doors. We'd seen the freezer glass hesitate. I went from room to room with a roll of painter's tape, laying fat blue X's across every reflective surface: bathroom mirror, hall mirror, even the microwave door. Rule 3, no voices from machines. Cassie yanked the smart speaker out of the living room socket, coiling its cord like a venomous snake. I shut off the Nest hub, stacked our phones in a drawer, bought an old wind-up clock from the thrift shop on Carson Street. Its tick was louder than a heartbeat, but it was honest. We wrote more: don't leave food out overnight, never sit with your back to a doorway, white noise at bedtime. Cassie circled the last one. "If they hate silence so much," she reasoned, "we fight silence with noise. Constant, neutral sound." That night we tried it. I set up a box fan at the bedroom doorway, its blades chopping the air into steady static. Cassie cued a recording of rain on her laptop before remembering and slamming it shut, then switched to an old white noise machine we dug out of storage. At first it worked. The room filled with hiss and whir, like we were cocooned inside a storm. For 10 minutes, 20, we breathed easier. Then the fan stopped. Not wound down, not clicked off, stopped. The noise machine cut with it, rain mid-drip, leaving only the emptiness pressing at our ears. The silence had returned, harder than before, almost smug. Cassie curled closer to me. "It doesn't matter what we do. It's not soundproofing, it's control." I couldn't argue. We lay there, eyes wide in the dark, listening to nothing until the nothing became unbearable. I reached for her hand. That's when I smelled it, a faint char like burned paper. Cassie sat up fast, nose wrinkling. The smell was real. We crept into the hallway, bare feet whispering against the runner. Halfway down, we both froze. On the beige fabric lay a single footprint, not shoe, not sock. Long, narrow, the heel sharp, the toes elongated, splayed. The print wasn't mud or dirt. It was ash, delicate gray dust burned into the weave. The air was still, the silence complete, and the footprint pointed toward our bedroom door. Cassie insisted we couldn't spend another night in the house. By evening, we'd stuffed duffels with clothes and toothbrushes, left the taped-over mirrors and gutted sockets behind, and drove across the river to Mount Lebanon. Her sister, Emily, opened the door before we rang the bell. "Of course you can stay," Emily said, ushering us into her bright colonial with its smell of tomato sauce and crayons. The normalcy of family noise pressed against us like a blanket. Two kids thundered upstairs in socked feet. Their golden retriever, Max, bounded toward me, tail wagging, then froze. His ears flattened. He sniffed once at my shoes and backed away, whining low in his throat. "It's just been a long day," I said quickly, but Max wouldn't take his eyes off us. We set our bags in the guest room. Emily had already made the bed with cheerful quilted covers. Cassie touched the pillows like she wanted to believe in their safety. Max padded to the threshold, sniffed again, then turned and slunk down the hall. He never crossed the line. At dinner, Emily's youngest asked why the people with no faces were standing behind us. Emily laughed it off as imagination. Cassie's fork paused midair, her lips pressed white. We didn't correct the child. Later, after everyone was asleep, Emily loaned us her baby monitor to use as a white noise machine, said the static would help us relax. We set the receiver on the nightstand. The hiss lulled me at first, background comfort in an unfamiliar room. Then the hiss bent. It shaped itself into chuckling, low and uneven, like someone trying laughter on for size. It wasn't a child's giggle. It wasn't adult humor. It was the same sound we'd heard in the forest, laughter learned, not lived. Cassie snapped the monitor off. The silence that followed was worse. We grabbed for the laptop, desperate to confirm or deny what we already feared. The cloud drive refreshed. A new folder blinked into existence. It bore Emily's street name. Inside, one file waited, stamped with tonight's date. Cassie was the one who said it out loud. "We can't just run from house to house forever," she whispered as dawn slid gray across Emily's curtains. "It started at the campsite. That's where it has to end." By mid-morning, against every instinct I had left, we were driving south again, back through Warren, back into the folds of the Allegheny where the roads narrow and the GPS forgets you. At the ranger station, we asked for a map. The attendant unfolded a color-coded sheet with polite efficiency. I scanned it once, twice. Sites 1 through 16, then a gap, then 18 through 22. "No 17, I asked. She frowned. "That section's under maintenance, has been for years, no reservations. But there's a post. A numbered marker," Cassie said. "Then somebody put it there." The ranger gave us the look you reserve for lost hikers and conspiracy callers. 17 isn't active. We left with the paper folded tight between Cassie's hands. She didn't speak until we were back in the car. "I booked it online, James. Confirmation maps, the whole thing. They knew we'd come." The dirt spur waited where it had before, ruts deepened by weather, branches clawing at our paint. The number post still stood at the clearing's edge, black 17 stenciled on white. It looked solid, official, inevitable. We stepped into the meadow under full daylight. It was smaller than memory, just a patch of grass ringed by pines. The air was mild. Birds called. The forest behaved as if nothing had ever been wrong. Cassie lifted her camera, hand steady despite the tension in her jaw. She clicked through a slow pan of the clearing. Later, when we sat in the car replaying the footage, there were holes. A smooth sweep of meadow, then jump. Shadows shifted, the sun an inch lower. Another few seconds, then jump. A missing frame here, a gap there. Time itself edited out of sequence. "Something doesn't want us to see," she said. We shut the camera off. The meadow hummed with false calm, and then the sound. Soft, metallic, unmistakable, zipper teeth one by one parting and joining again. But there was no tent, no nylon, no fabric anywhere. Just the slow unzipping, patient, deliberate circling us in open air. By the time we tried to fold back into normal life had become tissue thin, paper walls stretched over something waiting to poke through. At the office, my monitor glowed with spreadsheets I couldn't read. Columns swam like water, numbers dissolving if I looked too long. I took the stairwell for air, concrete echoing under my shoes. Halfway down, it came again, laughter. The kind that isn't joy but mimicry, low, stuttering, practiced. I stopped, pressed my phone to record. The sound throbbed in the space around me, yet on playback the waveform was flat, room tone, nothing but silence. That afternoon, HR sent a blanket wellness email. "We're noticing fatigue across the team. Remember, balance matters." I stared at the subject line too long, wondering if the system saw through me, if someone else had already reported hearing laughter where none should exist. At home, Cassie admitted she was losing time. She would start making tea and blink, kettle whistling on an empty stove, minutes gone. The oven timer never dinged. We'd find burnt pans cold hours later, as if the sequence of heat had been folded out of time. We tried therapy, desperate for anchor points. Dr. Rourke's office smelled of lavender and polished wood. We sat on the couch and recited our story: forest, silence, photos, the rules we drafted. She nodded, steady, professional. "Sometimes trauma projects patterns," she said, but her pen stilled when I described the printer spitting a photo of us sleeping. She recorded the session, said she liked to review phrasing for accuracy. At the end, she played a snippet back. The file contained nothing but room tone. No voices, no questions, no testimony. Just silence stretched thin across 40 minutes. On our way out, Cassie paused in the waiting room. The mounted TV, usually looping health tips, had frozen. The screen showed a still image, a tent interior, 2 figures pressed against the back wall, us. Cassie's hand locked around mine. The receptionist didn't even look up. The TV hummed faintly, holding our image in a place we hadn't agreed to revisit. We gave up pretending sleep was possible. The legal pad that had once held inventories and rules became our ledger of survival. Cassie drew a line down the middle, her shifts, my shifts. Midnight to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to sunrise. Each of us would stand guard while the other tried to rest. I took the first watch, pen in hand, noting the minutes as they crawled. 12:14, 12:28, 12:53. Cassie shifted under the blanket, not quite asleep. I drew another line, 1:05, and frowned. The mark wasn't mine. It tilted left, jagged, as if a hand had trembled while writing. Cassie hadn't touched the pen. "Did you?" I whispered. Her eyes opened. She shook her head. By 3:07 a.m., the silence descended. Not ordinary night quiet, the dome again, sealing the house like glass. The refrigerator stuttered out mid-cycle. The baseboard heater froze in its hum. I felt the air thicken, pressure closing against my ears. The walls answered back. Nails groaned inside studs, wood fibers pulling closer together, as if the house itself were tightening its grip. Cassie sat up, hand clamped over her mouth. We both listened, lungs shallow, to the structure of our shelter creak in unnatural unison. I forced my eyes toward the hall closet, its door ajar. At first, it was only darkness behind coats and boxes. Then blink, an open meadow under moonlight, grass silver, tree line crouched against the sky. It lasted less than a second. When my vision adjusted, only jackets hung there again, swaying slightly though the air was still. I didn't write the time down. The pen moved anyway. 3:07 scrawled in a stranger's hand. I told Cassie I was done waiting to be observed. If they watch us, I said, then we watch them back. She didn't argue. Her eyes had that hollow exhaustion that comes when the rules you write don't hold. So I drove to a thrift shop on Liberty Avenue and came back with weapons from another era. A battered 35mm Pentax, packs of Polaroid film, 2 handheld cassette recorders that smelled faintly of dust and tape. No Wi-Fi, I said, laying the haul on the table. No sync, no cloud, they can't slip in if we keep it analog. Cassie loaded the Pentax with careful fingers. I shook out the Polaroid cartridges like talismans. We set one recorder in the hallway, another on the nightstand, both humming with the low static of blank tape. For once, it felt like defense. That night, while Cassie pretended to read, I raised the Polaroid and clicked a shot of us on the couch. The print word out, white square trembling in my hand. We waded through the long, slow fog of chemical birth. The image sharpened, the couch, the lamp, the doorway, but not us. The cushions sat bare, indentations missing. The blanket draped neat and untouched. No humans, only the open doorway behind, darker than it should have been. My stomach flipped. Cassie reached for my wrist, eyes wide. Try again. I did, different angle, flash popping. The photo developed the same, room intact, us absent. Before we could speak, the kitchen printer rumbled awake on its own. Paper fed, rollers squealing like a throat clearing. A single sheet slid onto the tray. A Polaroid replica, color correct and bordered in white. James, alone. No Cassie beside me, no couch, no room. Just me in an endless gray field, staring back at the camera like I'd already been standing there too long. I started drawing the only map that mattered. Not of campsites or highways, not of exits or ranger posts, of silences. I spread the legal pad on the table, sketched a rough Pittsburgh grid. Every time the hum cut out, every dome of nothing that pressed against our skulls, I marked with a dot. The toll plaza, the stairwell at work, Emily's hallway, our own kitchen. Patterns emerged. The dots clustered at threshold, bridges, porches, doorways, tunnels, places where one space becomes another. Liminal seams in the city's body. Cassie leaned over my shoulder. It's not random, they come where the world folds. I tested the theory the next evening. We drove the Liberty Tunnel, headlights boring through concrete ribs. Halfway in, the radio flattened to tone, then dropped away entirely. The engine noise faded like a dream. For 30 seconds, we rolled forward in mute procession. Our mouths opened, no sound leaving. Cassie's eyes widened, white in the dashboard glow. The rear camera flickered. For a breath, it showed the tunnel empty. Then figures, a row of tall, narrow silhouettes walking in perfect lockstep down the center line behind us. They didn't run. They didn't need to. Each step matched the next, a choreography older than the tunnel itself. Then the feed cut. When it returned, nothing followed, just headlights bouncing on gray walls. We burst out into South Hills traffic, noise slamming back, honks, tires, city buzz. I pulled the car to the curb, chest heaving, the map burning in my mind. My phone buzzed in the console. I swiped without thinking. The map app was open, screen centered not on the tunnel but on our neighborhood. A new pin glowed red. I hadn't added it. The label read, Home. It came to Cassie in the middle of an argument that wasn't even about them. We were fighting about groceries, whether to risk another late-night run when she stopped cold, eyes narrowing like she'd heard her own voice echo wrong. "That first night," she said. "Do you remember why we saw them at all? You said, let's turn off the lantern, let our eyes adjust." I replayed the meadow in my head, the stove cooling, the stars sharpening, the silhouettes gathering. My stomach dropped. "We invited them," I whispered. "Not with words, with the dark." We dug out the legal pad again, scratched in a new line beneath the others. "Threshold debt, don't give them a doorway, don't surrender light." Cassie went room to room, taping door frames like crime scenes. "Doorways are fractures," she muttered. "Every one of them. They slip through when we let the boundary dissolve." That night we tried the simplest defense, continuous light. Every lamp on, kitchen to attic, our house blazing like a ship lost at sea. It felt foolish, but it gave us the illusion of control. At 2:11 a.m. the experiment failed. One bulb winked out in the hall, then another in the kitchen. Then the bedside lamp, the porch flood, the bathroom sconce. In perfect unison, the house cascaded to black. Not a fuse, not a surge. Just each bulb dying as if cued by a conductor. We sat on the bed in the sudden dark, holding hands, skin clammy. The silence came with it, heavy and total. Then the printer in the corner clicked awake. Its rollers whined, feeding a page we hadn't asked for. The sheet fell face down. I bent, hands shaking, and turned it over. Not us this time, a close-up of a hand. The fingers were too long, too narrow, ridged like pale branches. In its grip, our front door key, brass gleaming under some unseen flash. Cassie had always been the one with the folders, the color-coded plans, the rules. That morning she snapped. "I can't live inside their frame anymore," she said, shoving clothes into a duffel. "We leave tonight, I don't care where, motel, airport, anywhere they haven't memorized us yet." I tried reason, though my voice shook. "If we run, we give them the whole board. At least here we've mapped the silences, the thresholds. We've got leverage." "Leverage?" She spun on me, hair wild, eyes shot through with red. "They printed our key. They're already inside. You call that leverage?" She yanked the duffel shut and stormed to the car. I followed, begging, but she slammed the driver's door before I could climb in. The Subaru roared down the block, taillights shrinking. My phone buzzed immediately. A notification from our family share app. Cassie started a trip. Her live location pulsed green, arrow pointed east on the turnpike. I stared at it, helpless. As the miles ticked away, I called. She didn't pick up. An hour later, my phone lit with her name. Static filled the line, then her voice, brittle but steady. "I stopped at the service plaza near Cranberry. Needed gas, coffee." Behind her words I heard noise, TV chatter, loudspeakers, kids. Then her voice went small. "James, every screen here is wrong." "What do you mean?" "Every TV, every kiosk. They're not showing weather or traffic. They're showing our bedroom. Right now, empty but lit. Our bed, our dresser, like it's live." I gripped the counter until my knuckles went bloodless. "Get out of there, drive back, just leave." Silence on the line, then a sound that wasn't quite breath. Her voice returned, whisper thin, "James, I never left." "What?" "I'm in the driveway. The car hasn't moved. The odometer's the same. But my phone says I'm 2 exits down the turnpike." The call cut to dead air. We had run out of exits. The house was compromised. The car was compromised. Even Cassie's own sense of movement had been folded into their frame. That evening she dropped her duffel back in the hall with a hollow thud. "One night," she said, "we stand, we don't run. If they want in, they have to come through us awake." I nodded, though my throat was sand. We set to work, every doorway taped like a wound, blue excess crossing thresholds. Cassie stacked pots and pans in towers against the doors, jangling metal booby traps to wake us if hinges so much as breathed. I went further, poured salt in rough lines across the floorboards, circling bed and couch, muttering that it was half science, a barrier they'd have to disturb, and half ritual, a symbol they'd have to answer. By midnight, the house looked less like a home than a bunker built out of denial and kitchenware. We waited. The refrigerator hummed, then stopped. The silence pressed in, but nothing toppled. The pot towers stood untouched, tall and absurd. The salt lines glimmered faintly in the dim. For hours, no step, no laugh, no print of ash, just us holding hands, watching, breathing. At 3:18 a.m. the printer clicked awake. Cassie flinched hard, grabbed my arm. A sheet slid into the tray. The photograph showed our meadow, Site 17, grass bent in moonlight. And there our pot towers, every stack, arranged in neat rows at the meadow's center, gleaming under stars that didn't belong to tonight. Cassie whispered, "They moved them." "They copied them," I said, though my chest felt hollow. We ran to the front door, checked the towers, still there, still upright, but the photo showed otherwise, as if two realities were racing each other. The doorbell chimed. I lunged for the feed on my phone. Nothing. No person, no shadow, no frame out of place. Just the porch empty. Then the printer spat again. This time, a still frame of the inside foyer. Us, standing at the door, staring into a lens that shouldn't have existed. Cassie's hands shook as she poured coffee the next morning, but her voice was steady. "We need proof, not just for us, for anyone." Proof meant risk. Proof meant letting someone else into the orbit. Still, I agreed. We emailed a local reporter, a podcaster who chased urban legends, haunted houses, the weird corners of Allegheny County. She came that night with a handheld camera and a tone that wavered between skepticism and thrill. "People want stories," she said, "but they want to believe them too. If you've got something, we'll catch it." We set up in the living room, her camera rolling, our phones streaming live, comments already stacking in the chat window. We showed the folders on the laptop. Home 2023, Emily Street, the prints, even the key photo. The silence came right on schedule. 2:11 a.m., a wave of nothing pressing in. The pot towers in the hall didn't tremble, but the chat went berserk. "Is it looping? Where's the sound?" Glitch El Mao. Because through her mic, through the stream, all anyone heard was silence. Not static, not muffled noise, just blank absence. "Your levels are flat," the reporter whispered, tapping her recorder. "The silence is recording." The feed continued, thousands tuned in. And then the tone of the chat shifted. Fake, arg, mute button, prank. What we thought was proof became a spectacle. By dawn, the clip had gone viral as a hoax. The reporter left shaken but still polite, promising follow-up. That evening she texted us once, "Did you send me this?" Attached was a screenshot, a new folder in her own cloud drive, labeled with her street name. Inside, images of her past weeks. Her kitchen, her car, her bed, angles she couldn't explain. She didn't text again. We never beat them. That was the truth, Cassie, and I had to swallow like glass. The rules we wrote didn't save us, the footage didn't convince anyone, and the silence never stopped coming. So we learned to live inside it. We draped doorways with blankets, not because cloth was stronger than them, but because crossing a threshold should feel heavy, should remind us to look. We slept in shifts, trading the watch across the legal pad like a sacred ritual. And every night, when the house stilled and the hum ceased, we whispered our mantra back to the dark. Never trust quiet. It wasn't safety, it was survival. At Cassie's urging, we returned to the meadow one last time. We went at dawn when the light was too soft to cast tricks, when the birdsong sounded almost like forgiveness. Site 17 stretched empty, grass damp with dew. No silhouettes, no laughter, only objects left behind. Tripods, half a dozen, arranged in a wide circle. Metal legs dug into the soil. Some lean, some broken. None held cameras. They stood like scarecrows waiting for a crop that was us. Cassie bent to touch one, then drew back fast like the aluminum burned. They don't need them anymore, she said, and we left. Back home, the printer waited on the desk, asleep but never off. At noon, it clicked alive. A sheet slid out, face down. I turned it over with a hand that already knew. A photo of us at our kitchen table, chessboard between us, pieces mid-game. Both of us smiling, calm in a way we hadn't been in months. The timestamp read tomorrow.